Okay, part two of January 10th. I'm on chapter 31, and like I said, my sensor would go off, and it did because I just ate carby stuff. So, I'm on verse 8 of chapter 31. The last phrase in verse 7 is, "But God suffered him not to hurt me." Verse 8, "If he said thus, the speckled shall be thine wages, then all the cattle bear speckled. And if he said thus, the ring straked shall be thy hire, then bear all the cattle ring straked." And this is why I said, that in serving Laban, I felt like Jacob learned husbandry and that he understood which cattle were the stronger, and then he bred cattle to be strong. But also, he gives God the glory. Verse 9, "Thus God hath taken away the cattle of your father and given them to me." And it came to pass at the time that the cattle conceived, that I lifted up mine eyes and saw in a dream, and behold, the rams which leapt upon the cattle were ring-straked, speckled, and grizzled. So when I was reading yesterday, I had forgot about these verses. So God gave him, I said that he learned it in through experience, but here he says God gave him a vision of what to do in a dream. And then verse 11, "And the angel of God spake unto me in a dream, saying, Jacob, and I said, Here am I. And he said, Lift up now thine eyes, and see, all the rams which leap upon the cattle are ring-straked, speckled, and grizzled. For I have seen all that Laban doeth unto thee. I am the God of Bethel, where thou anointest the pillar, and where thou vowest a vow unto me. Now arise, get thee out from this land, and return unto the land of thy kindred." And Rachel and Leah answered and said unto him, "Is there yet any portion or inheritance for us in our father's house?" They were women. Women were given a dowry. And they're asking, where's our dowry, basically? Where's our inheritance in our father's house? "Are we not counted of him strangers? For he hath sold us, and hath quite devoured also our money. For all the riches which God hath taken from our father, that is ours, and our children's. Now then, whatsoever God hath said unto thee, do." So they're not too happy with their father either. They feel like their father has not even been loyal to them, saying, "Our father sold us and squandered and all that we would have inherited from him." So they're not happy with their father either. Then Jacob rose up and set his sons and his wives upon camels, and he carried away all his cattle and all his goods which he had gotten, the cattle of his getting which he had gotten in Paddan Aram, for to go to Isaac his father in the land of Canaan. And Laban went to shear his sheep, and Rachel had stolen the images that were her father's. What did she do? She stole the idols that were her father's. And did she steal them to worship them? Or did she steal them just to spite him? We don't really know, but she stole them. "And Jacob stole away unawares to Laban the Syrian, and that he told him not that he fled. So he fled with all that he had, and he rose up and passed over the river, and set his face toward the Mount Gilead. And it was told Laban on the third day that Jacob fled." So he had a 3-day head start. "And he took his brethren with him, and pursued after him 7 days' journey. And they overtook him in the Mount Gilead. So, um, I guess I said he had 3 days head start, but it took Laban 7 days to catch up with him. Okay, verse 24. And God came to Laban the Syrian in a dream by night and said unto him, Take heed that thou speak not. Don't even speak to Jacob, it says. Take heed thou speak not to Jacob, neither good or bad. So God warns him. Don't mess with Jacob. Don't speak good to him. Don't speak bad to him. Then Laban overtook Jacob. Now Jacob had pitched his tent in the mount, and Laban with his brethren pitched in the mount of Gilead. And Laban said to Jacob, now is God said don't talk to him either in a good way or a bad way, which means just don't talk to him. But what does Laban do? He talks to him. He says, What hast thou done that thou hast stolen away unawares to me, and carried away my daughters as captives, taken with the sword? It's quite an accusation. Why are you stealing away from me like a thief in the night, as one who stole my daughters away? They were his wives. And it says, carried away my daughters as captives, taken with the sword. He says he's not only did he steal away, but basically he's kidnapped his wives by force. And we know, because we read above, they said, whatever God's told you to do, do it. They're in agreement with him, and they're going willingly. They don't have a high opinion of their father. Wherefore didst thou flee away secretly and steal away from me, and didst not tell me that I might have sent thee away with mirth and with songs and with tabret and with harp? Do you think he really would have done that? Threw him a going away party. No, I think he would have yet again hindered him. And hast not suffered me to kiss my sons and my daughters. Thou hast now done foolishly in doing so. So you notice in verse 28, he says, hast not suffered me to kiss my sons and my daughters. He says the children that his daughters give birth to were his sons. They're mine. And he says, thou hast now done foolishly in doing so. And then, what does he say next? Verse 29, the arrogance of Laban. It is in the power of my hand to do you hurt. But the God of your father spake unto me yesternight, saying, Take thou heed that thou speak not to Jacob, neither good or bad. And now, though thou wouldest needs be gone, because thou sore longest after thy father's house, yet wherefore hast thou stolen my goods? So you stole my daughters, you stole my sons that my daughters give birth to, and you stole my goods. So it sounds like he's disobeying God. He even tells Jacob what God commanded him to do, and yet he still dares to break God's commandment, because he's accusing Jacob, which is speaking bad of him. And Jacob answered and said unto Laban, Because I was afraid, for I said, Peradventure thou wouldest take by force thy daughters from me. And I think he had great reason to think so, because listen to his words and what he said. Verse 32, With whomsoever thou findest thy gods, let him not live. Before our brethren discern thou what is thine with me, and take it to thee. For Jacob knew not that Rachel had stolen them. And Laban went into Jacob's tent, and into Leah's tent, and into the two maidservants' tent, but he found them not. Then he went out of Leah's tent and entered into Rachel's tent. And we know that who took them, Rachel did. Look how she fools her father. Verse 34. Now Rachel had taken the images and put them in the camel's furniture and sat upon them. So she was literally sitting on to hide them. And Jacob searched all the tent, but found them not. And she said to her father, Let it not displease my lord, that I cannot rise up before thee. So she should have stood up out of respect for her father. But this is her excuse. For the custom of women is upon me. So she said she couldn't get up because she was having her menstrual cycle. And he searched but found not the images. Rachel's lie is what I got underlined there. And she might have really been on her cycle. I don't know. But this is probably a lie. Probably an excuse. Verse 36 says, And Jacob was wroth and chode with Laban. And Jacob answered and said to Laban, What is my trespass? What is my sin that thou hast so hotly pursued after me? You're pursuing after me like a criminal. You're accusing me. What have I done? Verse 37, Whereas thou hast searched all my stuff, what hast thou found of all thy household stuff? Set it here before my brethren and thy brethren, that they may judge betwixt us both. So bring out your evidence, show it. Now he's going to speak his defense. 38. This 20 years have I been with thee. Thy ewes and thy she-goats have not cast their young, and the rams of thy flock have I not eaten. So, you haven't had any miscarriages. That is God's blessing. There. Thy ewes and thy she-goats have not cast their youngs. No miscarriages. And I haven't ate your male breeding rams, it says. And the rams of thy flock have I not eaten. Verse 39. That which was torn of beasts I brought not unto thee. I bear the loss of it. Of my hand didst thou require it, whether stolen by day or stolen by night. Thus I was in the day of drought. Wait a minute. Verse 40. Thus I was in the day the drought consumed me, and the frost by night, and my sleep departed from my eyes. Thus have I been 20 years in thy house. I served thee 14 years for thy 2 daughters, and 6 years for thy cattle. And thou hast changed my wages 10 times. This is his defense. All that you're accusing me of, no, you're the guilty one, he's saying. Now, who does he give glory to? Verse 42, except the God of my father, the God of Abraham, and the fear of Isaac had been with me, surely thou hast sent me away now empty. God hath seen my affliction and the labor of my hands, and rebuked thee yesternight. And Laban answered and said unto Jacob, These daughters are my daughters, and these children are my children, and these cattle are my cattle, and all that thou seest is mine. And what can I do this day unto these my daughters, or unto their children which they have borne? Now therefore, come thou, let us make a covenant, I and thou, and let it be for a witness between me and thee. So he surrenders. And he wants a covenant. He pleads for peace. Verse 45, and Jacob took a stone and set it up for a pillar. And Jacob said unto his brethren, gather stones. And they took stones and made an heap. And they did eat there upon the heap. And Laban called it Jagar Sahardutha. But Jacob called it Galad. And Laban said, this heap is a witness between me and thee this day. Therefore the name of it is called Galad. I guess that's how it's pronounced. Galad. Galeed. Galad. And then I got under there, Jacob speaks a blessing in the Lord's name. So, verse 49. And Mizpah, for he said, this is the blessing, the Lord watch between me and thee when we are absent one from another. If thou shalt afflict my daughters, or if thou shalt take other wives besides my daughters, no man is with, actually this is Laban speaking, I think. Yeah, because in verse 48 it says, and Laban said. So this is Laban. I'm sorry, it's not Joseph saying this, because it doesn't make sense that it's Joseph saying it. If thou shalt afflict my daughters, if you beat your wives, or if thou shalt take other wives besides my daughters, no man is with us. See, God is witness betwixt me and thee. And Laban said to Jacob, behold this heap, and behold this pillar, which I have cast between me and thee. This heap be a witness, and this pillar be a witness, that I will not pass over this heap to thee, and thou shalt not pass over this heap and this pillar unto me for harm. Because, Jacob is become a mighty man. God has blessed him, and he has many flocks, and he has many sons. And I think Laban's fearing that Jacob will continue to increase, which he does, and become such a great people that he will, in the future, Jacob's people will be enemies with Laban's people. So they make a covenant. This pillar, I won't go over for war, you won't come over for war. Verse 53, the God of Abraham and the God of Nahor, the God of their father, judge betwixt us. And Jacob sware by the fear of his father Isaac. And Jacob offered sacrifice upon the mount, and called his brethren to eat bread. And they did eat bread, and tarried all night in the mount. And early in the morning Laban rose up, and kissed his sons and his daughters, and blessed them. And Laban departed, and returned unto his place. So they end up departing in peace. So I think in the end, even though Laban was, played the part of the victim, I think he in the end did heed God's warning, and he let Jacob go in peace. Verse 32, or not verse 32, chapter 32, and Jacob went on his way, and the angels of God met him. And when Jacob saw them, he said, this is God's host. And he called the name of that place Mahanaim, or something like that. And Jacob sent messengers before him to Esau his brother, unto the land of Seir, the country of Edom. And he commanded them, saying, Thus shalt ye speak unto my lord Esau. Thy servant Jacob saith thus, I have sojourned with Laban, and stayed there until now. So Even though God had set Jacob over Esau, and his father had blessed Jacob over Esau, he didn't take his higher position, but he called himself his brother's servant. So he humbled himself before him out of fear. Verse 5, I have oxen, asses, flocks, and men servants, and women servants, and I have sent to tell my Lord that I might find grace in thy sight. He's seeking peace. And the messengers returned to Jacob, saying, We came to thy brother Esau, and also he cometh to meet thee, and 400 men with him. So he's coming. How does Jacob react? Then Jacob was greatly afraid and distressed, and he divided the people that was with him, and the flocks, and the herds, and the camels, into 2 bands. And he said, If Esau come to the one company and smite it, then the other company which is left shall escape. So he's doing something himself to preserve people. But what did God promise him? I will bless them that bless thee, and I will curse them that curse thee, and I will never leave thee nor forsake thee. He's got God's protection, but he doesn't seem to be remembering that because he's afraid. Verse 9, and Jacob said, O God of my father Abraham, and God of my father Isaac, the Lord which said unto me, Return unto thy country and to thy kindred, and I will deal well with thee. Jacob says, I am not worthy of the least of all the mercies, and of all the truth which thou hast showed unto thy servant. For with my staff I passed over this Jordan, and now I am become 2 bands. So, what did I say about the affliction of God? It gets us on our knees, and in his fear and in his distress, he's on his knees. So God works through affliction to humble us. And is he humble? Yes, he says, I am not worthy of the least of all the mercies and of all the truth which thou hast showed unto thy servant. Then he prays, verse 11, Deliver me, I pray thee, from the hand of my brother, from the hand of Esau, for I fear him, lest he will come and smite me, and the mother with the children. He's asking for the salvation of God. Deliver me. And thou saidest, so he's reminding God what God said to him. And thou saidest, I will surely do thee good, and make thy seed as the sand of the sea, which cannot be numbered for multitude. So he's counting on God and his promises. And he looked there that same night. Oh, no, he didn't look. And he lodged there that same night, and took of that which come to his hand a present for Esau his brother, 200 she-goats, and 20 he-goats, and 200 ewes, and 20 rams, 30 mulch camels with their colts, 40 kine, and 10 bulls, 20 she-asses, and 10 foals. That's quite a peace offering, isn't it? And he delivered them into the hand of his servants. Every drove by themselves, and said unto his servants, Pass over before me, and put a space betwixt drove and drove. So, he said, put a space between the 200 she-goats and the 20 goats, and the 200 ewes and 20 rams. So put space between the goats, space between the sheep, space between the camels, space between the cattle. And he delivered them unto the hand of his servants, every drove by themselves. And he said unto his servants, pass over before me, and put a space betwixt drove and drove. And he commanded the foremost, saying, when Esau my brother meeteth thee, and asketh thee, saying, Whose art thou? Whose art thou? And whither goest thou? And whose are these before thee? Then thou shalt say, They be thy servant Jacob's. It is a present sent unto my lord Esau. And behold, also he is behind us. So he's sending this peace offering that just keeps coming. First the goats come, then the sheep, then the camels, and then the cattle. And Jacob's way behind. And so commanded he the second and the third, and all that followed the drove, saying, On this manner shall ye speak unto Esau when ye find him. And say ye moreover, Behold, thy servant Jacob is behind us. For he said, I will appease him with the present that goeth before me, and afterward I will see his face. Peradventure he will accept of me. So went the present over before him, and himself lodged that night in the company. And he rose up that night, and took his 2 wives, and his 2 women servants, and his 11 sons, and passed over the ford Jabbok. And he took them and sent them over the brook, and sent over that he had. So he sent everything before him, even his wives and his children. And then Jacob was behind, because look at verse 24. And Jacob was left alone, and there wrestled a man with him until the breaking of the day. And when he saw that he prevailed not against him, he touched the hollow of his thigh, and the hollow of Jacob's thigh was out of joint, as he wrestled with him. And he said, Let me go, for the day breaketh. And he said, I will not let thee go, except thou bless me. So this is a Christophanies. It says Jacob wrestles Jesus. Jacob's salvation. Jacob believes. I will not let thee go, except thou bless me. And he said unto him, What is thy name? And he said, Jacob. So Jesus asked him, What's your name? And Jacob answers, Well, my name is Jacob. But Jesus already knows the answer. But there's a reason why he's asking him, and this is the reason. Because there's something going to happen. Verse 28, and he said, or Jesus said, the Lord said, Thy name shall be called no more Jacob, but Israel. For as a prince hast thou power with God and with men, and hast prevailed. So that is why Jesus or the Lord asked Jacob his name, because he's changed his name to Israel. And from this is the nation that has begun there. And verse 28 of chapter 32, and thy name shall be no more Jacob, but Israel. Verse 29, and Jacob asked him and said, Tell me, I pray thee, thy name. So he asks again. Well, I guess not. So because the Lord asked him his name, now Jacob is asking, Tell me, I pray thee, thy name. And what is the answer? And he said, Wherefore is it that thou dost ask after my name? He just got a question. The Lord didn't tell him his name. It says, Why are you asking me my name? And then it says, And he blessed him there. And Jacob called the name of the place Peniel, For I have seen God face to face, and my life is preserved. And as he passed over Peniel, the sun rose upon him, and he halted upon his thigh. So there was a price with that blessing. He became crippled after that. He halted upon his thigh. Verse 32, therefore the children of Israel eat not the sinew which shrank, which is upon the hollow of the thigh unto this day, because he touched the hollow of Jacob's thigh in the sinew that shrank. So it become a custom in Israel to not eat that part of any animal because of what happened here this day. And that's the end of chapter 32 and the end of today's reading. And I always, when I read through Genesis and I read that Jacob carves up these rods and puts them in front of the animal's eyes, and they breed in front of these rods, and God blesses the offspring. I always thought, wondered about all the meaning of that, and I come up with my own theories, but God has corrected me, hasn't he? He's corrected me. In verse 31:9, it says, thus hath God taken away the cattle of your father and given them to me. The offspring and the blessing of life is always of God. And I theorize that through experience, God blessed Jacob with knowledge about animal husbandry, so he used his knowledge and his experience to breed cattle with wisdom. But he could have put a male and a female together that he chose to breed for strength out of his experience and his knowledge, but God gives the increase. And they could not have conceived. God could have closed their womb, or they could have conceived and had he could have not been successful. So it's only right that in verse 31:9 that Jacob gives God the glory. That I just thought the rods and it all sounded bizarre. Sounded like superstition or something. But I thought about it, and these rods that he put markings on, and he put them in the ground. I said, well, that could simply him setting up a zone, a pasture that were boundary sticks and markers. It could have just been, it doesn't really explain why he did it, but we know the results of all of his actions was God blessed him. And we can do what we can do. And we could say, well, it's by my knowledge and by my skill that I've gained what I've gained. But no matter what we do, whether we have knowledge and skill, or whether we're ignorant and have no knowledge and no skill, God doesn't need our help. And God's blessing isn't dependent upon what we do. Can he work through what we do and bless us? Yes. But he can also just bless us. And there's scriptures about that where Israel stood and watched the angel of the Lord destroy their enemy without raising a sword themselves at all. God utterly can do what he does. Or he can give us the victory. He can make a little. He said, one shall chase 1,000. One man shall chase 1,000. So, it's all God. We need to always give him glory for what he does. And that goes along with what we read today in the name of God, right? Which was, I got to look at it again. Elohei Tehillati. This is great are you, God, and greatly to be praised. You are to be feared above all else. And then it says, I ascribe to you the glory due your name, and come before you in humble prayer to worship you. And remember in confession, I confess I'm guilty of trying to take your praise and steal your glory. When we think, I've done it. I remember in my unbelieving days, the thought of saying, God bless me for what I eat. I'm like, why should I ask God's blessing for what I eat? I went to work and I worked 8 hours and I earned it and I bought it. I was so arrogant then. I didn't realize that God gave me my life and gave me my breath and gave me the mental power and the physical strength to have a job. The opportunities was his that he gave, and my talents were what he gave. The strength that I have, he gave. It's all been given. And that it says that in okay, I don't remember. I'm thinking it's Corinthians, but I could be wrong. But it says, why do you brag about yourself, man? What do you have that you have not been given? What do you have that you have not been given? And the answer is, well, I don't have anything, because God created not only me and formed me in my mother's womb and brought me forth from my mother's womb alive and living. Not all people are born equal. Some people are born with physical deformities. Scientists will say, well, the mother shouldn't have done this, or they find reasons for it. There's certain drugs back in, I don't know what year it was, that was linked to birth defects, and they made them illegal. They stopped producing those drugs and they took them off the market. They caused many, many birth defects. But there's still other birth defects, and there's, it's not always known and why. And even if there is a drug that was out there that caused it, God is, his hand is not shortened by what we do or what happens. He could have thwarted that drug. He could have caused the woman not to take it. He could have caused the man that created the thing and marketed the thing and put it out there. He could have whatever. So God is sovereign. God is in power. And here I was born, without, as far as I know, birth defects, without, I'm not armless or legless or blind or deaf or that I know of. I don't have any mental deficiencies. All those things that can happen to a child in the womb. God's in control of all those things. And I am what I am because I am what God made me. And so it's been given. And along with all his gifts and talents and things that he's given me, then he gives me the opportunities to use them. So God has to get all the glory all the time. And we should never get proud and boastful and think, that we did it. And we deserve to be patted on the back. And but people tend to do that, don't they? They give out awards, they give out trophies, they give out accolades to men and women for their abilities. But it's God, I'm thinking of who is it? Talent on Loan by God. Is that it's one of the talking heads. I think Rush Limbaugh. But I think that's kind of a false and contrived phrase of humility, because he's pretty arrogant. But he says that talents on loan by God. I don't know if he's sincere in that, or if he's, I'm so wonderful. No, I'll say it's God. I don't know. Blah blah blah. I should stop while I'm ahead and quit running my mouth. I'm done for the day, and I closed up my book, and I put away my papers, and I again forgot to mark them off. Keep track of where I'm at, so I don't forget later. Lose track of where I'm at. I read because God gave me sight. I read because God gave me the understanding to read and the ability to fathom the concept of reading. It's all God. Some people will never read because they'll never be able to learn, because they don't have the capacity to learn. It's all God. Give God glory. So again, it says star means I read chapters on time. So he did not let me utterly forget, even though today, like I said, I got to get this done because it's a church night. And last Wednesday I stayed home, and I got so many messages from people that said, "Oh, I hope you're not sick." And I was just like, "No, I just stayed home." Tim made dinner, and we ate, and I could have gotten up after I ate and quickly went out the door and been on time for church, but I just said I'll just stay home and watch it online. It was easier. It was convenient. That's why I did it. I wasn't sick. Tim doesn't usually make dinner like that. That was unusual, but I guess he wanted me to be able to eat before church. A lot of times I don't eat dinner on Wednesday night until after church. And I really, really don't like driving at night anymore. The glare of headlights bothers me. I don't feel like I see as clearly at night as I used to. The dark seems extra dark. And part of that is, I'm getting old. And the doctor did tell me I'm starting to develop, that's the word I want to use. I'm starting to develop, what's it called? Cataracts. And it's cataracts, I think, which causes eye sensitivity to light, and your eye lenses get cloudier and cloudier and cloudier, and I don't know, I think maybe it thickens or whatever, but until you just, your vision is really, really compromised. And then, when it gets to a certain degree, then you're eligible to have surgery, and it's just starting